Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect.
Hey friend, welcome back to the show. So happy to have you here. I hope that you are enjoying your summer. We are in full summer chaos mode over here. Definitely check out the last few episodes if you haven't, because we're talking how to manage the summer chaos amidst all the overwhelm. And I also had an awesome guest, Miss Amber Romaniuk, on last week where we talked a lot about hormones, nutrition, body freedom around food, lots of great tips and messaging in those episodes. So go check them out. With that being said, we're only 2 weeks in, only like a week and a half into summer, and I'm already just feeling like, okay, we need to scale things back. We need to get a little more organized, trying to practice what we preach here, but also looking at those boundaries so that we're not fully getting overwhelmed. So with that being said, for me, that has looked like a little less effort on the podcast. So I'm still showing up here. I'm still giving it my all. Don't get me wrong. However, I've really been trying to push 2 episodes a week ever since last July. I increased my podcast episode frequency from once a week to twice a week. And I've honestly been able to do a pretty dang good job at doing that, if I do say so myself. However, there have been a couple weeks here and there I didn't make it and we only got 1 in, and that is okay. Last week was one of them, and I think the week before that, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, was another, and I'm already feeling this week to feel crunched trying to get 2 out. So I'm really just feeling a shift. I'm trying to not push myself with this. I don't want to push content just to push content. I really want to just be there when the inspiration strikes and give you all of me when I am there, but sometimes I'm not fully there and ready. So I'm going to give myself grace this summer with the podcast. I'm going to show up every week as best I can. That might mean 1 episode a week. That might mean 2. I might have a week where I don't have one if I've just been so tapped out and overwhelmed. But rest assured, I am coming back. The show is continuing, and we are just trying to give ourselves a little grace in the chaos of summer, as I hope you will as well, because as much as part of me felt like I was failing if I backed off the podcast and I really just need to keep pushing, it also just isn't authentic to how I want to show up here. So with that being said, I'm still here every week. Keep checking in. There might be an episode, there might be 2, but we are still here talking all the fun pelvic floor and core fitness strategies for you. So let's hop into today's episode. This is a topic I talk about with my patients and with women on the reg, but I don't know if I've necessarily done an episode on this specific topic. Now, we've talked about breathwork a lot. I talk about these topics of different types of breathwork a lot in different episodes, but I don't think I've brought it together in one episode. And if I have, it's been a minute. So I figured it would be a good time just to kind of chat, if you will, about the different kinds of breath work and really what our goals are, because this is what I find becomes really confusing for women when they're hearing all these different cues for breath, different cues for bracing, and they can get really mixed up and end up, unfortunately, missing the big picture and maybe even causing some problems or even just not getting what you wanted out of it. And that is a bummer. If you're putting in the time and effort, you want it to be worthwhile. But one of the most confusing things I see in pelvic floor rehab is women thinking that all breathing is the same. So today we are going to clear that up, because breath work is amazing. And yes, it is definitely a hot topic right now. And I don't want you to just be like, oh, breath work, because it really is the key. Breathing is healing, and it is trending right now. There's a lot out there for good reason on nervous system regulation, stress management, healing your anxiety and cortisol, strengthening your core, right? Like there's so much out there on breath work, which I think is awesome because it does do a lot with our nervous system, especially nervous system regulation. And so there's a lot of camps out there talking about it from that perspective for nervous system regulation, vagus nerve stimulation, calming the body down, stress, anxiety, all that stuff. But then from pelvic floor rehab, we're also looking at it more from a physiological lens, looking at the pressure management that breathing creates and that it optimizes. Because if we're using our breath correctly, it is creating a equal pressurized system in that intra-abdominal core canister so that forces aren't being shoved in places that they shouldn't be or more than other places, because really that's why we see problems like leaking, prolapse, hernias, diastasis. There's lots of things that are caused just from mismanaged pressure. And so that's from a pelvic floor rehab standpoint, we're really looking at, are we optimizing that pressure system, but also we can use that breath to strengthen. And so we really want to look at, and we're going to dive into that today of what that means, what that looks like. And so from the pelvic floor rehab lens, it can get a little confusing because personally, and not all pelvic floor PTs are the same, but I get a lot of patients coming in, especially women who have worked with other pelvic floor PTs, and they'll be like, yeah, we talked about breath, but maybe they were talking more about breathing with your brace, right? During effort with exercise. They're focusing on, we really focused on exhaling and Kegeling at the same time. So we definitely talked breath work. But I tend to talk about it in two different buckets, which we'll get into here in a minute. And I know I have done an episode on that. So that is probably the episode where I broke this down a little bit. But like I said, it's been a minute. So you don't really need to go digging because we're going to talk about that here today and just kind of clarify some things. But the other camp that talks about breath work is fitness coaching, right? So personal trainers, they're out there trying to give cues for breath, which I think is great. We aren't trying to hold our breath. We're looking at it to help improve strength and your mechanics and your motor control and all of that. And so as you can see, it could get confusing because some of us might be focusing more on the strengthening side. Some of us might be focusing more on the nervous system side. People hear lots of breathing advice and they don't really understand the context or the goal for what those different types of breath are for. So that is what we're chatting today. So with that being said, I break up breath work into two different buckets. And so that is where I talk about this first bucket. I call it the balancing bucket, but this is also the bucket that you can think of when you think of more typical breath work. And when we hear the word breath work, we tend to think of more of nervous system regulation. And so this is the bucket of breath work that we're using for the nervous system piece, for anxiety, for calming the body. But we're also using this type of breath work in the pelvic floor lens. While we are using it for the nervous system for sure, we're also using it to help balance the core, which is why I call it the balancing bucket. Because in my approach, we're using that breath to really help open up tight muscles in your core. We're using that inhale. We're focusing mostly on that inhale phase so that we can gently stretch and open up muscles so that then we have a more balanced core where we can now strengthen from a better foundation versus strengthening from a place where maybe your back muscles are tight, your pelvic floor muscles are tight, your abs are weak. Then we start strengthening and we cause problems because there wasn't balance in the system. So there wasn't equal pressure management if those muscles aren't balanced chest either, which means those muscles are in their neutral state. They're not tight, they're not cramped up, they're not weak, they're just in their neutral state where they can both stretch and contract. So our goal here is really to obviously down-regulate the nervous system, reduce that stress and threat in the body and calm everything down. It helps promote recovery. It really increases the awareness in your body of where you're holding tension, because if you really take that deep breath, you can start to get this awareness of where is it going and where do I feel that expansion come in and where do I not feel expansion? Because if you don't feel expansion in a space in your trunk, in that core canister, you should feel expansion in that whole core system. It's a 360 breath. And so if you don't feel expansion in the whole system, that is where your body is tight. That is where your body is holding tension. And that is where we want to get your breath, because that will help then expand and open that space. So this is why in the pelvic floor rehab lens, I'm also using this big, relaxing, calming breath in different stretching positions, different yoga poses, cat-cow, child's pose, happy baby, deep squat. These are some of my favorite yoga poses that help get the breath into some of these tighter areas. Because again, with a 360 breath, you should really feel pelvic floor expansion, back, tailbone, sides, belly, rib cage, that whole canister of your trunk should expand with your breath. And ideally, it is expanding from the bottom up. So you're really filling that balloon from the bottom up. And this is, again, 360 breathing. This is also what people call diaphragmatic breathing. But I think diaphragmatic breathing doesn't really do as much good as it can, because yes, if we're getting our belly to expand, we are calming down the body, we are tapping into the diaphragm and the nervous system. However, we're still leading to imbalance, because if only the belly is expanding, then again, nothing else is. So things are staying tight. So I really like the concept of 360 breathing, or even piston breathing a little bit better, because this is where we're really thinking about, as we inhale, is that inhale pressure filling the whole balloon? And on our exhale, it's just gently recoiling. In this type of breath work, we are not tightening on the exhale. We are just letting the body inhale and relax. So this could also be box breathing. This could be breathing during meditation. This could be breathing when you have pain. This could be box breathing, longer exhales, so that you're making sure that you're getting the nervous system to calm down with longer exhales than inhales. And so again, this balancing breath is what we're really focusing on, either at rest, when we're stretching, when we have pain, when we're feeling stressed or anxious, or when you're just checking in on your body and you want to reset that breath. So that's really what we're talking about in this balancing breath work, or breath work in general. And physiologically, this slows your heart rate down, muscle tension decreases, your pelvic floor relaxes, your vagus nerve gets stimulated, which helps digestion and healing and calming, and your nervous system really shifts towards recovery. And again, this can be really helpful when we're having pain and anxiety and stress and tension and all of those things. So that is the breath work that we're focusing on in the balancing bucket. But then this other bucket of breath work is more, okay, now I'm exercising, right? I'm doing a moment of effort. I want this breath to help strengthen my core, and also just make sure I'm managing pressure well during moments of effort, because those moments of effort are where we are at more of a risk for prolapse and leaking and hemorrhoids and hernias and injury that we want to avoid. And so let's first just really differentiate, because this is where things get interesting. This kind of breath work, the goal isn't to completely relax, okay? As I just said, we're under a moment of effort. So the goal here is to manage your pressure with within that effort, within the brace. So with this breath work, you are braced. This is what I call the restore bucket because we are restoring the strength in your core. You are bracing your core, which means you're not just engaging and bracing your abs because that's not your core. Your core is a system. So if you don't know how to brace, that's definitely where it's worth getting on a coaching call with me or come see me one-on-one. But even virtually, we can help make sure you know how to brace because that is really the key. If you don't know how to brace, then obviously you're not going to know how to breathe within that brace. But in this episode, we're just assuming you know how to brace. This bucket of breath work is, again, we're creating stability because we're engaged. It helps to transfer forces through the body and it really protects the spine. So we want to use this breath work when we are braced, when we're doing a moment of effort, when we're carrying, cooking, pushing, pulling, getting big, heavy moments. That is when we want to be braced. I don't know why I said cooking. I don't know. I'm just thinking end of day. My body's usually tired. I usually engage a little bit, but I'm thinking more like groceries, right? Laundry. I was trying to think of chores. Cooking, you might not be braced. You might actually just be standing there. And if you're just standing there relaxed, then please actually do not brace during cooking. We really just want to be bracing during moments of effort, whether that's the gym or that's, picking up the laundry, picking up the kid, pushing a heavy stroller, right? So we're really looking at, okay, we're braced. And again, not just abs. So we're not sucking in. We're definitely not holding our breath. And we're also not clenching everything. So we want optimal pressure management. So you should have your ribs stacked over your pelvis. This really helps, again, with alignment within the brace and makes sure that you can breathe within the brace. So we need our posture and alignment to be optimal here. So rib cage stacked over pelvic girdle. And we are trying to control that expansion. So the inhale, when things are expanding, we're not fully letting it go and expand as much as it can, because that would mean that you're letting your brace go. So that is the big difference. You're not just inhaling, letting the brace go, and exhaling, tightening the brace back up. You're tightening your brace and then you're breathing within it. And if you can't breathe within it, this is what I call a body boundary, because that's then telling us that pressure is going to be shoved more in one space than the other. So we're really wanting that ability to brace, hold that brace. Now inhale. Obviously, this also isn't a huge inhale because then it will be hard to hold that brace. So it's a normal inhale. And then on the exhale, you should feel a little kegel and tightening of the lift of the pelvic floor. And if you don't, this is where I encourage you to actually kegel and pull it up. So again, this is where now it just is like you put a weight on the pelvic floor and in your core the moment you brace and breathe within it. And this is how we strengthen the core with your breathing. So it is functional support, but it's also strengthening your body with every breath you're doing within that brace. So again, you're picking up your baby. So you want to brace the system. So when we're bracing, we're going to create your brace on the exhale. So whereas the restore bucket and more of the breath work style is more focusing on inhale, relax, this breathing within the brace is focusing a little bit more on that exhale, engage side of it. So that means that on your exhale, you should feel a little kegel and lift. And if you don't, I want you to give a little kegel and lift. So we're going to brace up the core. Now you're going to inhale, and I do encourage a breath into the back, into your ribs, into the tailbone, because that helps to spread that breath pressure so it's not only wanting to go towards your belly and chest. So when you're braced, it's a great idea to aim the breath more for your rib cage and back. So we're going to inhale as we bend over, and then we're going to exhale as we pick up that baby, or exhale as you're standing up from a squat, or exhale as you're pushing a heavy door. So we're wanting to time that exhale and then therefore kegel. So you are thinking of that kegel at the same time as the exhale during that moment of effort. However, this is where I also want to emphasize that we don't just want to focus on the exhale Kegel, because then we might actually just making our pelvic floor tighter and tighter and tighter through each rep. So just as much as you want to feel that lift on your exhale, you should also feel a little give on your inhale, a little expansion on your inhale, but not a full release, because then you've lost your brace. So we've braced up with a little Kegel, a little abdominal engagement. Now we're inhaling, feeling that pelvic floor drop a level or two, exhaling, pulling it back up. So make sure you're feeling both phases of that through your exercises. And if not, get in on a coaching call with me, because this is why coaching, and especially in-person pelvic floor work, internal pelvic floor work, can be so helpful. But I coach women virtually on how to assess this on their own as well. So we can always get a lot of great feedback through coaching. But also my on-demand program, Restore. It's a 12-week program where you can show up, listen to the videos week by week. I talk you through all of this breath work. There's a lesson each week, so we go a lot more in depth than I do in this episode. And there's exercises tied to it. And you have access to DM me, send me videos, ask me questions, so that you do get that individualized support. So Restore is always an option for you. The link is in the show notes below, as well as my information if you're looking for coaching, because this is the key. These types of breathwork strategies are huge for really putting the pieces of your body back together and making sure that we're not going to cause issues in the future. But women tend to get stuck when they're thinking mostly on, oh, I need to relax everything, or, oh, I need to brace, but then they're never fully relaxing. So it's that give and take. We need both. If you're just relaxing, but you don't know how to create support in your system, then you're going to have back pain, not getting stronger. Yes, your nervous system might be feeling better, but you're not building that strength and pressure management and stability. Whereas if you're always bracing, you can cause prolapse and more problems just because you're always engaged and you don't know how to release and let it go. You also probably have anxiety and a lot of nervous system stress. So the bottom line is, it isn't just relaxation or strength. The breath work is the key because it has the ability to do both of these things. But that's only if you are putting that intention behind it, because a lot of women do come back to me saying, yeah, I'm working on the breath work. I'm really thinking of the Kegel on my exhale. And then I have to emphasize, hey friend, remember that other breath work where you're really focusing on inhaling and relaxing. That's really going to be helpful. And also make sure during your exercise that you're also feeling the inhale expansion phase and not just the Kegel lift phase. But I'll also have other women saying, yeah, when I'm doing my relaxing breath, I'm doing happy baby. It feels really great. And then I'm Kegeling on the exhale. And I have to say, oh, wait, no, don't Kegel on the exhale, because that's going to upregulate things and get things tighter when the goal there is to really relax and inhale and open it up. So if we can see the differences and also know what our goal is, then it can help guide you more towards one style of breath work than the other. And these are only two different, very generalized categories of breath work, because as you've already heard me mention, even within these buckets, there's a lot of different strategies for breathing. Even within the bracing strategy, there's a lot of different techniques we use for how do you breathe within a brace. So it's also not just as simple as these two pieces, but at the same time, if you can master these two pieces, you've got 90% of the problem. And so that is where we can see so much benefit just from the breath work. That pelvic floor connection is crucial. We're not just thinking diaphragm. We're not just feeling belly and back expansion. You really should feel pelvic floor relaxation and lengthening. You should also feel it contract and lift, not just a tension, but like a lift through multiple levels. It needs to respond to moments of pressure, sneezing, coughing, jumping off a curb. These should be automatic moments that it engages, and it should coordinate with that breath and with your brace. So definitely pay attention to your pelvic floor and how it's moving throughout the day and if it's doing what it's supposed to do, because it shouldn't stay in one state all day, meaning you shouldn't be clenched all day. You shouldn't be relaxed all day. It needs to adjust and respond to whatever the goal and load is that you're doing at that moment. But again, just some quick common mistakes. We are not just belly breathing. We're also not just sucking in our belly when we are engaging our core. We're also not constantly bracing because that can create a rubber band effect and put way too much pressure down and restrict your diaphragmatic movement. We are not holding our breath, especially with exercise, because that can put way too much pressure down. So if anything, just make sure you're breathing, but ideally you do want to time exhale through effort. And another mistake is trying to stay relaxed during heavy lifting because, again, remember here we are trying to be braced and engage. The opposite is also true. So a common mistake is when women are trying to engage and brace during the lengthening, stretching exercises and calming breath work. And thinking that breath work alone also fixes weakness, because if you're just breathing, you're not going to get the strength aspect. The strength aspect comes in when we're breathing within our brace and we're doing it appropriately. So just a little troubleshooting to help you know what you might need. Ask yourself, do you struggle more with tension? Then you need relaxation work. Do you struggle more with instability? Then you need pressure management and bracing support. If you struggle with both, which, let's be honest, most people do, then we need to work on both and just working on it in different strategies and in different spaces and not together at the same time, because that's when it gets confusing. But we have a lot of places we can start to tie this into real life. It doesn't even have to be during stretching or exercise. So even just taking a few deep breaths in the morning or before bed, doing a little meditation, doing some breath work when you're having a stressful time at work or after a stressful meeting, just taking a few deep breaths here and there throughout the day. If you have a back pain flare, then you can just breathe into your back a little bit throughout the day. So you really can just sneak these breathwork strategies in a little bit. It doesn't have to be a whole routine, especially with bracing and breathing. This is where when you're picking up kids, think about bracing and how do I breathe through it. Picking up heavy groceries, carrying heavy loads of laundry, especially strength training, getting off the floor. This is where if we can think of our brace and breathe through that moment of effort, all of those effort moments also feel easier, and you also just saved your back and your body, and you just got in a little exercise snack throughout the day. So this is how I love to strengthen, and this is why I love the breath work. And so just know I'm here for you in coaching or in Restore, because inside Restore, we do teach both, because healing isn't just about relaxing your body, and it isn't just about strengthening your body. It's about helping your body adapt to what life asks of it. And that's why I created Restore. So the healthiest core and pelvic floor aren't always relaxed, and they aren't always braced. They are adaptable. Okay, so let me know if you need any help. I hope this helped clear the air and brought some of the breath work home to you. Go try it out. And if you have any issues, let me know. And otherwise, I'll see you here next time on the podcast. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.